All right, welcome back, everyone. We're going to move on to our next topic here. Before we get to the Ottomans, there's one other civilization we're covering, and that is the story of the Mughal Empire. I don't know how familiar you are with them, but they're an Islamic power that ruled over India, primarily between like the late 1400s and the 1700s. A very interesting civilization. I guarantee you, you all are aware of one of their most significant achievements. Once I talk about it, you'll go, oh, it was them, and yeah, it was them. So anyways, we're going to talk about this. Should be a lot of fun. Also, just as a reminder, we're getting closer to the midterm, right? So you should be focused on that. We're going to get through the Mughals, the rise of the Ottoman Empire, and then you basically have your midterm here. So that's coming up pretty quickly. All right, so here we go. How do we start our story? I guess the first thing to understand before we get into the Mughal dynasty itself is how you have the spread of Islam into India. Because, you know, if you look at our map of India, it's obviously very close to the Middle East. Sometimes, obviously, you would spend a lot more time discussing India if you took a history of Asia class. In this class, kind of like the Mongols, I just did a little brief lecture on them. Same thing here, just a little brief lecture on them. It was something you would cover more in a history of Asia course, but it's still very important, even in a course like this. So the spread of Islam really began around the 900s AD into India by a man named Mahmud Ghazni, as you could see there. And how he spreads it into the Islamic faith into India is kind of two ways. One, his nickname was the Sword of Islam, which kind of tells you something that he obviously is coming in with a bit of brute force and trying to get people in India to convert to the Islamic faith. And this is primarily more in the northern part of India. And again, kind of keep that point now in your mind, because at the end of this lecture, I'm going to explain why that's significant as well. So part of the movement into India was definitely through just this sword of Islam mentality. But part of the Islamic faith was also people in India wanting to go to the Islamic faith. And part of that had to do with what is called the caste system in India. And I don't know how familiar you are with the caste system, but basically in India, you're born to a caste, a class, essentially. The difference is, you know, in the United States of America, you might be born in one class, but through hard work and personal responsibility and doing the right things and making the right choices, you can move up in class, social mobility. In India, under the caste system, it doesn't work that way. Whatever caste you're born in is the caste you're going to stay in your entire life. And that means for a lot of people who are part of the lower castes, they don't have much to look forward to in this life. And so the Islamic faith provided them an outlet. So this is something that a lot of people in India chose to convert to the Islamic faith. Others were more forced into it. There's, you know, some interesting controversy about this. I've read a couple things. There's one book by a man named K.S. Lay, as you can see there, and his book is called The Growth of the Muslim Population in Medieval India. And according to him, between the year 1000 and 1800 AD, there were somewhere between 50 and 80 million Hindus that were killed in the conflicts between the Islamic powers moving into India and the Hindu population inside of India. So this is something that I'm not an expert on. I'll start by saying that, but I kind of read a little bit about it, and obviously there is a long-term conflict. And I will tell you again, we'll see at the end of this lecture how that long-term conflict relates to things all the way until today. One of the things about this lecture, I'm going to show you the impact of this information of the Mughals moving into India, how it impacts the Middle East today. And that's kind of cool when we start to get it. As we go more and more into the modern era, you're going to see more and more of that. I think students really gravitate to understanding how this stuff impacts the Middle East today and therefore the world. All right, so anyways, that's the beginning. So around 900s, the Islamic faith begins to move into India. Now, in terms of the Mughal emperors, the first major Mughal leader of India is a man named Babur the Tiger. And you can see his dates there. These are the key words. And he is the one responsible for moving mainly into the northern part of India, around this area of Punjab. And he's going to have a conflict with some of the other powers in the area, specifically a man named Lodi. And Babur the Tiger comes in, and there's this big battle in 1526 between Babur the Tiger and Lodi. So Babur the Tiger, he is the Mughal, he is a Muslim, right? And he's going to fight against Lodi, the people there in India. And apparently the numbers of this are interesting, that Babur the Tiger had with him only about 12,000 men in this conflict, about 12,000. To give you perspective, Lodi had about 100,000 men. So you go, wow, that's pretty one-sided, right? Who's going to win? Babur the Tiger is going to win, and he's going to win handily. Why? He's a very good military man. He's very aggressive, very full of energy. They use these war elephants to fight, and apparently one of the things that I read about is the Mughal emperors would train the war elephants they had to literally stomp on a person with their hoof, then use the trunk to grab onto a limb and tear the limbs off, right? So that's kind of how the Mughals fought. But the war elephants were pretty intense, but what really helped them and had such an easy victory despite being completely outnumbered is Babur the Tiger. Look at the years, he's starting to come in with gunpowder to fight. And so artillery warfare. And what's the old expression, never bring a knife to a gunfight, right? And that's essentially what happened. And Babur the Tiger was victorious very easily. And the Mughal Empire, the Mughal emperors began to take control of India. So that's where it starts. He's the most important first person you need to know, Babur the Tiger. He is the one most responsible for moving in. And by about 1529, they already took over that very important city of Delhi inside of India. All right, so there you go. That's how it starts. He had a son named Humayun. You don't really need to worry too much about his son. I don't really spend a lot of time talking about him. He's very young. He's only 23 years old when he comes in. And what we do see with the Mughal dynasty, it is pretty much father to son in terms of rulership. One of the things I would do as you're taking notes on this is maybe at some point when we're done lecturing, kind of make a chart. I think I gave, yeah, a chart where you might have the person, right? And this is just something to help you study, a date, and what they did, right? And their accomplishments. I'm just going to put what they did here. And you would put, Babur the Tiger would be the first one. And then you had to have Humayun would be the next one. And as I go through them, it's kind of, their accomplishment. It's just kind of a good way, I think, to keep everything straight. Just a good way to review when you're done. Make a little chart like that. All right, just a suggestion. Anyways, his son Humayun, he's only 23 years old when he comes into power. He really spent a lot more time doing artwork things, painting. He wasn't this big conqueror like his father, but still things were relatively stable. All right. Once he dies, he has a son, and the son of Humayun is probably one of the more famous of all the Mughal leaders. And who is the son of Humayun? Well, the very famous Akbar. There he is, Akbar. It's a little joke, of course. Anybody knows Star Wars from the old Star Wars movies when Star Wars were good movies? Akbar, but of course, I just got a little pun there, and it's a trap, right? For all you familiar with that. Who's the actual Akbar? Well, it's this guy, right? And Akbar is going to be ruler from 1556 to 1605. And he has a very good reputation inside of the Mughal leadership and inside of India and inside of this time period. He is probably one of their best leaders. So we'll spend a few minutes talking about him and obviously these key words you need to know about him. So some of these, other than the key words, I'm going to say some other things you obviously want to write down. So I guess the first thing to know about Akbar, he's kind of described almost as like a Renaissance man. He's very intelligent, athletic, musician. He is always full of energy. He's said to be very rarely a cruel person. He was always described in very positive manners. He's actually a contemporary of Queen Elizabeth of England, if you're familiar with her from the Tudor family line. And we have sources from Queen Elizabeth who, the West often kind of thumb their noses at these individuals. But she said, oh, he was a man of great praise and great humanity, she described him as. And so he had a very positive reputation at the time. As I said, he was full of energy. He needed to because he had 300 wives. And so very busy guy there. And he treated people very well. So remember, he is a Muslim. And he's governing over a civilization that has a large Muslim population, but also a large Hindu population. And up to now, the Mughals had been using that jizya idea, if you remember, that tax on non-Muslims. And one of the things Akbar did, he said, no more. I'm not going to tax people in India just because they're not Muslims. And so he actually eliminated that. So that's a good example of kind of his tolerance that I just mentioned. So there's that. He, is going to be very wealthy. There's tremendous amount of money there. It was said that during his time there was areas like treasury that was full of hundreds of thousands of plates made of silver and gold and all these gems and diamonds. So there's tremendous wealth there as well. He was pretty strict. He was tolerant as long as everybody listened to him. He was definitely one of these carrot and stick approach type people. And so, for example, there was one city that's called Shitagar. I can never pronounce that well, or it's spelled Shitor or Shitor. I'm not honestly sure how to spell it. I apologize. Pronounce it. I apologize. That's the right spelling. I'm not sure how to pronounce it well. But there's a Rajput. A Rajput is a Hindu leader. And in that one city, they rebelled. They said, no, we don't want to be ruled by the Mughals. And he leveled that city, killed about 30,000 people in that city. But, he also went after any Muslims that, went after the Hindu population as well. So he was kind of tolerant, but he expected obedience and in order in his society. So he does a lot of that. That's part of the important things for him. We know he even held meetings where he would have these meetings in this other city called Fatpur Sikri, where that I'll show you an image of as well. I'm going to show you some images of these places. They're pretty cool. Where in the city of Fatpur Sikri, he would have people of all the different faiths come together and discuss tolerance and how can the different Muslim denominations get together and Christians and Jews and all these different groups of people. So there's that about him as well. During his time, there was even a crude form of smallpox vaccination made. So you could really see a sense that he's very accomplished. Economically, he's accomplished. Militarily, if anybody opposes him, he does push him down pretty well. He expects, order in his society, but he also treats people well, assuming they listen. And again, he just builds a lot of pretty cool things. Let me show you some images of some of the kind of cities that were built. So this is a few images of the Shitor place. So these are some images I found. Here's one. Here's another one. It looks like something like right out of Indiana Jones. Right, pretty cool stuff. Here's another image. And you go, oh, these are black and white images, or they're just photographs, or they're actually images. So this is what it kind of looks like in an actual regular photograph. So pretty cool things that he was building, right? And this is the red sandstone at Fatpur Sikri that he built as well. So all this is made out of red sandstone. So you could clearly see what I mean by the Mughals and by Akbar being very accomplished. They do a lot of things and they're doing really well. He dies in 1605, Akbar does, and he was probably poisoned to death by his son named Jahangir. So let's go on and talk about what happens after he's killed. So his son Jahangir, he is named. I'm sorry, he's the one who probably poisoned his son. He had a wife named Nur Jahan who was very influential on him. Apparently, we have coins and from the time period, and she appears on the coins, which was not a normal practice. So that's just kind of an image we have there. Of him kind of doing some of this stuff. And so that's just a little bit you need to know about him. He was apparently kind of a decent ruler, kind of like Akbar. He didn't seem quite as interested in doing as much as Akbar, but overall, the Mughal dynasty functioned fairly well. He had a son, and his son is named Shah Jahan. And this is one of the more interesting stories of the Mughals. Shah Jahan ruled from 1628, as you can see there, to 1658. And Shah Jahan, he's probably best known for having 5,000 concubines. And, you thought about Akbar had 300 wives. This guy has 5,000 concubines, Shah Jahan. And, this is the thing. Apparently, this is kind of a crazy little story. So he had 5,000 concubines, right? But apparently, he also fell madly in love with this woman named Mumtaz. And so he fell in love with this woman named Mumtaz. He was his favorite wife, of course, and he loved her, loved her, loved her deeply. But he also had 5,000 concubines. Well, every once in a while you hear these stories of celebrities, and they have a wife, and then they cheat on their wives, and after they cheat on their wives, they have to make amends, and sometimes it involves them buying them really fancy rings and all this stuff. Well, if you have 5,000 concubines, you really have to do something to impress your wife. And so Mumtaz, that's not her entire name. Her entire name, and I left it off on purpose here to show you something here, is Mumtaz Mahal. And so Shah Jahan, in order to impress his wife, built her a little mausoleum called the Taj Mahal. This is one of the most stunning monuments ever made. It is absolutely mind-blowing. I'm going to have a documentary I'm going to watch on this as well. So I'm just going to mention a little bit because you have the whole documentary. I've got some statistics on it as well that I'll just read off to you that you can jot down. So obviously it's built for his wife, Mumtaz Mahal, as a mausoleum. It's a burial site. It took 20,000 men to build, 20 years to build it. It's, of course, made out of pure white marble. It's the minarets that you see there are 130 feet high, right? And it was built in a place to honor his wife, Mumtaz. The gem work on it is stunning. It is absolutely amazing. There's a whole meaning to it about afterlife. And when you watch the documentary, you'll see it. So that's why I said it's one of the most famous things in the world, and it comes from the Mughal dynasty, specifically from Shah Jahan. What a lot of people don't know is that there was a second Taj Mahal that was planned. What they were also planning to build, and it didn't happen because of what's going to happen to Shah Jahan that I'm going to explain in a second, they wanted to build a black Taj Mahal as well. This is a artistic rendering of what it may have looked like, but it basically right across from the Taj Mahal, they wanted to build one out of black marble. Never got done, primarily because of what happened to Shah Jahan. What happened to Shah Jahan? Well, Shah Jahan had a son. And the son of Shah Jahan really did not like what he was doing. He thought he was too impulsive, spending too much money, too not religious enough, abandoning the Islamic faith too much. And so in 1658, he captured his father and imprisoned him. Who is the son of Shah Jahan? This man named Aurangzeb. So Aurangzeb, he is the son of Shah Jahan, and he had a brother named Dara. And so Shah Jahan, really, his son Dara is the one he really liked. And Aurangzeb was the one who got sick and tired of Shah Jahan's behavior. And so he captured the father, he put the father in prison, and then the brother, he captured his brother, and the story goes that he strapped him onto an elephant, humiliating him, naked, humiliating, walking him down on the public streets. Then he beheaded him, and then after he beheaded him, he sent his head to his father, Shah Jahan, while Shah Jahan was in prison. So Aurangzeb, not a nice guy. I mean, if you look at the picture, even he looks kind of mean. And I kind of sometimes describe Aurangzeb as kind of the anti-Akbar. Because he's not nearly as nice as Akbar. He is very cruel on a number of ways. He gets rid of all the court luxuries. He's very strict on everybody inside of India. He restored the jizya, right? And again, all these things I'm mentioning, you would obviously want to jot down. He restored the jizya, the tax on Hindus. He forbade alcohol inside of India because he took the Quran very strictly. And so, and no alcohol was allowed. He outlawed all Hindu festivals, right? Akbar, I don't think I mentioned this before, but Akbar even took Hindu wives. And, no way Aurangzeb was going to do that. He outlawed Hindu festivals. He forbade Hindus from carrying any weapons. He destroyed the Hindu temples, and it was during his reign that he created a lot of animosity between the Muslim population and the Hindu population inside of India. And this is obviously going to create resentment. People in India are like, what the heck's going on here? It wasn't too bad. We're not a big fan of the Mughals necessarily, but at least they were tolerant, and there was a construction, and there were good things, and potential vaccination to diseases. And now this guy Aurangzeb comes in, and he's intolerant and cruel and all these things. So not a surprise, there was a bunch of revolts. He eventually died in 1707, but he left India vulnerable. Who does he leave India vulnerable to? Well, the European powers. And it was around this time that you're going to start to see the colonization of India by European powers, specifically, of course, Britain. And so this kind of what helps open the door for the British, and even the Russians had interest into India, to go in and take control of India. So what does all this mean for the long term? So that's the end of the Mughal dynasty, right? He's dead. The Mughal dynasty is gone. What's the long-term effect of this? Well, let me show you one more image here. So here's a map of where it says, let's start over here, British India, right? This whole area that was under control of the British Empire, essentially, from after the Mughal period. The British moved in around late 1600s, early 1600s, but it was more small, then it became bigger and bigger by the time we get to this period of time. The British will stay in India until 1947. 1947, 1948, the British are going to leave. They're going to decolonize. But this is the issue. Remember when he talked about the spread of the Islamic faith into India? Remember how I emphasized it was more in the northern area? So there's more Muslims in the north, in the south, very few. And when the British left after World War II, as I mentioned, the Muslim and the Hindu populations didn't get along that well. And so one of the major impacts of this Mughal dynasty is once the British leave, the Muslims said, we don't want to be part of India anymore. And what they did is they carved out of India another country, Pakistan. And this is how you get Pakistan. Pakistan was carved right out of India as primarily a Muslim civilization. India would remain primarily a Hindu civilization. Now, unfortunately, it didn't go smoothly because there's an area right between them. You should also know Kashmir. So do get these terms down. I know I didn't put them there, but they're on the map. So Pakistan, obviously, if you don't know that, Kashmir, definitely get that down. Because that area of Kashmir, you can see it here as well, that was disputed. India claimed it, Pakistan claimed it, and as a result of that, from 1948 until today, there have been multiple wars over this area between Pakistan and India. It's been a very violent history. Both these countries have nuclear bombs, which of course is very important. And in terms of the modern Middle East, look what Pakistan borders, Afghanistan. And if you, of course, think of 9/11, right? 9/11, which we'll cover at the end of the semester. A lot of, we think of bin Laden, 9/11, Afghanistan. But where did Afghanistan and 9/11, Al Qaeda, and the Taliban, especially Al Qaeda, get a lot of its followers from? They actually came from inside of Pakistan. So this is kind of the long-term impact of this. So this is why, I do talk about this even in a history of the Middle East class, because while we generally think India, it's not really a big part of the Middle East. Once you get into Pakistan and Afghanistan and all that connection, you kind of begin to see why it all connects. So I hope all that's clear. So that's a bit on the Mughal dynasty. Again, you're going to get more information from the documentary on them. So you're going to have a documentary you can take some notes on, and it kind of covers the Taj Mahal, cover a bit of the Mughal dynasty as well. And that's about it. And now that we've done all that, we can then kind of go back in time a little bit. We're going to circle back to about 1300 AD again, start talking about the Ottomans, and get into them in our next lecture. All right. Thank you, everyone.